The Prismatic Draft League is back for its biggest season yet. PDL Season 10 has arrived, and league staff have been talking for quite a while about wanting to cook up something special for the format this season. And with the return of Mega Evolution in Pokemon Legends ZA, they get an opportunity to do just that. Mega Evolution will be returning to VGC soon. We're going to take an early look, sort of, but I mean a really early look, because without known abilities for the new Megas, we've instead decided to go further back in time for this season. Last season was basically VGC 2022 with some modifications, so playing in Sword and Shield. This time we're going back to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire for a VGC 2015 Draft League season. If you're not sure what format that is, just remember Wolf Glick winning in 2016 and then take out the restricted Pokemon. 2015 is same format minus restricteds, so those will not be legal in this Draft League, but a lot of powerful Mega Pokemon are. And although I tried something different last season, it is time for the Halifax Masquerainmen to return. I have updated the logo, bringing it, believe it or not, much closer to its inspiration. This is the look that the Masquerainmen are bringing into PDL Season 10. I hope it's going to be a fun one. I'm sure it's going to be a fun one. I hope it's successful, is what I mean to say. This is where I usually do a roster configuration image, but you'll notice this is very simplified from past seasons, and that is because for the first time, the PDL has switched from a tier-based draft to a points draft. So instead of Pokemon being sorted into a handful of tiers, they have point values across a broader range. And with the switch to a points draft for this season, there is no more messing around with free agent slots, and some Pokemon can be freely dropped, some can't. When everything has a points cost, you kind of have to deal with everything equally. So it is a very simplified and more flexible roster configuration than we've usually seen before. For the basic rules, as I said, it is a VGC 2015 season. That is Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire without restricted Pokemon. Each coach had a budget of 115 points from which to draft at least 10 and at most 11 Pokemon, including a maximum of 2 Mega Evolving Pokemon. There's no requirement to draft any Megas, but I think everyone did. And if you're going to, you cannot draft more than 2. As for how the Mega Pokemon are handled in battle, they are not required to Mega Evolve when they appear in battle, but they are required to hold the Mega Stone, so they don't have access to any other items. That way, the base form on Mega Evolved can also be included separately in the draft, and you don't just get both of them by drafting the Mega. You do have that opportunity cost of having to hold the Mega Stone. Pokemon cost a variety of different point amounts, but all legal Pokemon, with a small number of exceptions, cost between 1 and 20 points. As for the exceptions, so one is Smeargle. Smeargle was mostly banned. There's an asterisk on that we'll get to later, but the important thing to know going into my own draft is that I was not allowed to draft Smeargle. Mega Salamence, I think, was 25 points, and Mega Kangaskhan was 30 points. Everything else 1 to 20. And like I said, there are no special restrictions on trades. You can drop any Pokemon from your roster and pick other Pokemon up as long as you stay within the points budget. If you've watched past PDL seasons and seen the distinction between free agent slots and other slots, that no longer exists for this season. We'll see what happens after, right? But going into this draft, so I was in a pool of 14 teams, and I got the 14th overall pick. So it was a snake draft order as always. This meant that I had one of the wheels. My first pick was not until number 14, but then my next one was number 15. So I didn't have much of a draft plan, and in any case, a lot of the strongest Pokemon on the board were going to disappear by the time my pick came up. But what I did have an opportunity to do with the wheel was look for a very strong 2 Pokemon combination. So my first draft idea, before I knew what the order would be, was to just take Mega Gengar and then figure something else out later, because Mega Gengar is one of the best Megas in the game, and Gengar is my personal favorite Pokemon, and it's Season 10, it's the return of the Masquerainmen, it's kind of a spectacle. I figured I could do some showmanship with Mega Gengar trapping shenanigans and just have fun using my favorite Pokemon. But then I got the 14th pick, and Mega Gengar was gone long before that. So my focus shifted to finding a strong 2 Pokemon combination with a coherent strategy that I could build around, keeping things relatively simple, just looking for something powerful that I understood how to work with. And when my first pick finally came up, I mean, again, I was making my picks 2 at a time, but we're going to go one by one in the video recap. When my first pick finally came up, the obvious candidate to me was Cresselia. I did consider, like, Politoed, Mega Swampert, Rain, but I didn't feel like I understood as well how to build that, so you'll see what I did with Cresselia in a moment. Actually, I might as well tell you now. It sets Trick Room. I drafted a Trick Room team. But Cresselia does a lot more than that, of course. It is one of the very bulkiest Pokemon in the game. This is Generation 6, so its special defense stat has not taken the Gen 9 nerf yet. It's just a very famously successful VGC 2015 Pokemon. It's the C in Chalk, and setting Trick Room is the main thing I'm interested in for it, but it also can run bulky support options. It can set up itself with Calm Mind. I think that could be a fun game plan in some matchups. It has, like, reasonable coverage, right? It's a Psychic type, but it also has Moonblasts and Ice Beams and Icy Winds to throw around. But really the key to the Cresselia pick is the other Pokemon that I picked along with it, and that was Mega Camerupt, for the first of the 2 Megas that I was allowed. I have included in parentheses the abilities and stat values that it gets before I Mega Evolve it, because again, I am not required to Mega Evolve it, although with this specific Mega, a bit of a wrinkle to this that'll come up soon, but with this specific Mega, probably I have a strong incentive to Mega Evolve it almost always, right? But I do have the option to use those regular Camerupt stats and abilities if I want. But Mega Camerupt is one of the slowest Pokemon in the game, also hits extremely hard. I believe Eruption is not boosted by Sheer Force because it doesn't have a secondary effect, so why would it be? But I can throw off powerful Eruptions in Trick Room, outspeeding almost anything. Or I can use Sheer Force boosted moves like Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Heat Wave if it gets that, I'm not sure. Earth Power, those are all boosted by Sheer Force. It also has enough of an attack stat that I can go physical sometimes if I want. I can even use Earthquake next to Cresselia, which of course has Levitate, making it immune to that ground type damage. So Cresselia setting Trick Room for Mega Camerupt looked to me like a very, very strong starting point, again with the last pick in round 1, wanting to build around something powerful. Hard Trick Room is a fairly straightforward strategy, but an extremely effective one. This is a generation without dynamic speed, so as some people pointed out in the Discord during the draft, Trick Room is arguably the strongest speed control option there is. If you watched last season, you might recall that I thought going into that draft about drafting a hard Trick Room team, and then I got scared out of doing it, and then later I thought that it actually might have been a good idea after all. And there were a lot of sets last season when I was watching and commentating other people's sets where it felt like basically they were won or lost on how successfully a Trick Room game plan was executed. So I wanted to take a stab at it here. If I get better at playing hard Trick Room overall because of this, I think that would be helpful to me as well. I could carry forward into actual VGC formats. And Camerupt is just a cool Pokemon that I've never had much opportunity to use very much. So all things considered, I thought this was one of the strongest 2 Pokemon combinations on the board, and also it was something that I kind of wanted to play around with anyway, going in that Trick Room direction in this league, committing harder to it than I ever have before. Funnily enough, I also wasn't sure about Swampert Rain because Swampert has a double weakness, but the same is true of Camerupt, so hopefully I get my speed control right. There's no Terra to bail me out. After that, of course, I had to wait through all of the rest of the second and third rounds before my next 2 picks came along, and I was thinking about what else I could use to build out a Trick Room mode. I figured with Camerupt I probably wanted a Fire, Water, Grass core, but I also figured that if there was something else that could do big burst damage in Trick Room, I didn't want to miss out on it, and I thought that there were a few supports that I could use to make the most of a Trick Room mode, right? So like Fake Out could be valuable to put out pressure that creates openings for Cresselia to do its job. Follow Me or even Rage Powder could be useful to direct attacks away from Cresselia. Feint could be very valuable to break opponents' protects and create openings for Mega Camerupt to attack before the Trick Room turns expire. And again, I also wanted something else to hit hard so I'm not dependent on Mega Camerupt for all of my damage under Trick Room. So as I was looking over the draft board, one Pokemon in particular jumped out at me. It took me a little bit of time to notice, but then I was confident that I did not want to miss out on it, and that was my 3rd round pick, Hariyama. Hariyama brings not everything that I just said to the table, but quite a bit of what I just said, all in one Pokemon. It gets Fake Out and Feint. It also has a pretty high attack stat, and with Guts or its own Sheer Force, it can do the kind of heavy damage under Trick Room that I don't want to get exclusively from Camerupt, right? If I need something else to take some KOs, I can run an offensive Hariyama to that end. It also has setup options like Bulk Up and Belly Drum, but what really put Hariyama over the top for me, I mean, I saw the attack stat in Guts, and I thought, this is something I want on my Trick Room team for sure, but what really put it over the top, such that I wanted to take it at the next available opportunity, was that it gets Fake Out and Feint as well. It also gets Wide Guard. I'm not sure how good Wide Guard is in this format. I'll find out as we see some matchups over time. But, I mean, a Feint user in particular was high on my list by this point in the draft, and getting one that also does a lot of damage with some of its sets I thought was very valuable. This is also my second time drafting Hariyama in this league. In my very first PDL season, which was Season 2, I had Hariyama on my team, so it is kind of nice to be reunited with it after all this time. And then for the second pick to be paired with this one, because of course I had the wheel again, I wanted to get working on that Firewater Grass Core. I wanted more Trick Room threats. I wanted more Trick Room setters, because one issue I have when I draft Trick Room sometimes is I don't draft enough Pokemon to set it up. And so I had a Grass type in mind, and I had a Water type in mind. Both of them were fairly cheap picks that I thought could deliver good value, and I didn't want to miss out on either. In fact, I probably would have taken the two of them here if Hariyama hadn't jumped out at me when I was looking back over the draft board later. So basically the next pick came down to which of those two Pokemon I thought was more likely to get through 2 more rounds of the draft to come back to me. I could defer that pick and prioritize the other one, and I think I made the right choice. With my 4th pick, I took Trevenant, and I think like 2 different people in the Discord were openly upset that Trevenant had been taken because they wanted it, so I think grabbing it here was a good idea. Trevenant is another Trick Room setter. It also is slow itself. Honestly, the stats are not as good as I thought I remembered, but it does bring a bit more physical offense. While I have, of course, Mega Camerupt delivering big special offense for this team, it does give me the second piece of the Firewater Grass Core. It has Frisk, which, if you watched Wolfglick play the Wolfie Draft League, you know the value in closed team sheet of seeing the opponent's items. Trevenant specifically being able to help with that, but yeah, just giving me a little bit more offense, some complementary type synergy, and another Trick Room user I thought was plenty to justify grabbing this Pokemon for only 9 points. And I'll also note here, because this was on my radar at this point, Trevenant could also participate. I'm not 100% sure which Pokemon have access to their hidden abilities and which don't, but I think other than legendaries, most do at least. I'll check the legality of my teams as I build them. If I'm right that Trevenant does actually get Harvest in this generation, which I'm not 100% sure of, but I think it does, then a few of my Pokemon already benefit from Sun, right? Harvest is more effective in Strong Sunlight. Cresselia is a bulky Pokemon. It can run a setup set, and it gets Moonlight, which heals it more in Sun. And of course, Mega Camerupt does extra damage in Sun. So although I didn't really commit to building a Sun team, I have a few different Pokemon now that can benefit from some kind of Sun mode. And I'm going to flag here that this is where I started to think I could draft Vulpix later in this draft. Usually only fully evolved Pokemon get weather setting abilities, but Vulpix is an exception. It does get Drought. And Ninetales at 11 points I thought was maybe a little bit pricey, but I thought Vulpix could be an okay alternative at only 3 points. It's a bad Pokemon, but just having Drought might be enough for specific matchups here and there. So the Trevenant pick not only does all the things that I listed, just a solid glue piece to bring the team together, but it also gives me another reason to think about taking Sun later in the draft. And sure enough, the Pokemon, the Water type that I thought I might take here, but decided was more likely to get through 2 more rounds and come back to me, actually did. So my 5th pick was decided by this point as well, and that was Clawitzer. I'll give a shout out here to Shaboogles of the Ontario Minchinos a couple seasons ago, now the Ontario Oguris. But that Minchinos team in Season 8 showed me the power of this Pokemon, and when I saw it at 9 points, and I knew I was drafting Trick Room, I was pretty sure... Actually, I wasn't that sure that this was the Water type I wanted. I was looking at others. I was thinking Gyarados could complement Mega Camerupt very nicely, but then Gyarados was drafted, I think, in the 2nd round, so I didn't have an opportunity to take it. Washed Rotom was also kind of interesting to me. Could even do Disquake with that in Camerupt, but that also was taken before I got a chance at it. And so after those two were off the board, I knew I definitely wanted Clawitzer. With that Mega Launcher powering up all of its pulse moves, it's a very powerful, fairly slow attacker. Again, you can go back to Season 8 and see it put in work all throughout the season, and that was in a Gen 9 format. This is Gen 6. A lot of power creep hasn't happened yet, and Clawitzer is still here with that Mega Launcher. And it completes the Firewater Grass Core, and it has some other complementary coverage that's beneficial to Camerupt, right? Like, Camerupt will have issues dealing with some Dragon types because they resist its Fire Stab, and A lot of them are flying types or have levitate, so the ground stab is not of much help, but Clawitzer gets the Mega Launcher boost on Dragon Pulse. Suddenly the Dragon types have something else that they have to be afraid about as well, right? So I thought Clawitzer was a pretty solid complementary Trick Room attacker next to Camerupt or next to Trevenant, and I'm happy to have the Fire Water Grass Court finished already, and a lot of powerful, slow offense. And the pick to pair with Clawitzer, once again on the wheel, the 6th pick, completing a full Pokemon lineup before I fill in whatever other niches I want the rest of the draft. I was thinking about getting a Fairy type because I'm still a little bit afraid of dragons, even with Clawitzer on the team. And Cresselia also can have issues with dark types messing with it. So I thought a Fairy type would be pretty strong. I actually was thinking about Mega Audino as my second Mega. I'm not kidding. There's a lot of talk in the Discord leading up to the draft about Audino being the worst Mega. And granted, it is a pretty bad one. But I was seriously looking at it at one point. Because Audino, without Mega Evolving, is a decent support Pokemon, decent stats, decent move pool. Losing the item slot would be unfortunate, but it could still do something. And then you could Mega Evolve it situationally and get like Stab, Dazzling Gleam. Honestly, one of the reasons I didn't take it was there were people memeing in the Discord about drafting it for the bit, and if one of them actually wanted to do that, I didn't want to get in their way just for this silly niche. I don't think anyone did draft it though. But genuinely, because I was thinking about that, I looked around for other Fairy types and I found one that I liked more for this team. A little bit expensive, but I figured it was worth it. So my 6th pick was Klefki. Klefki gives me not only Fairy typing, but also Steel, so a lot of resistances and whatnot. It does give me not a very strong Dazzling Gleam, but one that I can throw at a problem as an emergency button if I need to. Again, into the Dragon and Dark types that can kind of mess with some of the rest of the team. But it also gives me a lot of Prankster support, right? I can set screens with Klefki. I haven't even gotten to maybe drafting a Drought setter yet, but already I can get Prankster Sunny Day with Klefki. I can use Crafty Shield to stop opposing status moves, which could be pretty valuable for getting my Trick Room set up. And I don't know. I don't remember the whole list now. I came up with more than that. There's a lot that Prankster Klefki can do to enable this team specifically to get going. It's a pretty expensive support Pokemon, but I do think it's likely to be worth the price. And so now I have my basic 6 Pokemon that honestly I probably could bring these 6 to a lot of matchups, right? But at this point I was thinking, what are some other matchup pieces that could be useful, maybe open up some alternative modes? And I still didn't have a second Mega. Now, not everyone drafted a second Mega. It's not like it was mandatory to do that. But I kind of wanted to, and I was not interested in Mega Audino now that I had a different Fairy type. And so when the wheel pick came along next, I figured the second Mega, if I take one, is probably the most expensive pick that I make from here. Let's get it out of the way and then figure out the budget from there. And ended up going with another one that's strong in Trick Room, Mega Ampharos. Mega Ampharos, once again, as you can see, it actually gets slower when it Mega Evolves, and it's one of the slower attackers in the game. And I like it for basically having complementary offensive coverage to Camerupt. Again, Camerupt has issues with water types, dragon types to an extent, ground types, which is an issue for both of them. Yeah, we'll see how I deal with that. Hidden Power is legal in this draft, by the way. But Ampharos, for example, is a much more solid bring against rain teams than Camerupt is. And there might be some other specific team compositions where it's more favorable to have this attacker. I think there's enough complementary coverage between the two of them that it's hard for an opponent to prepare for both of my Megas in Trick Room. The synergy isn't perfect. They are both weak to ground. They're both special attackers mainly, although Camerupt can go physical, at least situationally. And they are both slow, so I knew from the first 2 picks that I was committing fairly hard to Trick Room here. But that is something I have to do. But I think the complementary coverage is pretty valuable for making this team harder to prepare for. And honestly, I think I even could. I don't know if this will ever happen. I don't have a specific matchup in mind for it, but I think there may be a situation where I could bring both of my Mega Pokemon to the same set, maybe even to the same game. Because Ampharos, before it Mega Evolves, 115 special attack is not nothing, right? It hits hard enough, and Camerupt, I think, hits hard enough that, in theory, I could choose situationally which one to Mega Evolve, and the other one's complementary coverage could still be valuable. Maybe that's a pretty specific situation that will never come up. I'm not saying it's likely, that I'll actually be in a position where I think that's my best decision. But in a vacuum, I think it's plausible. But in any case, if I'm facing a really scary rain team or something and Camerupt just doesn't look like it will get any room to operate, Ampharos looks a lot stronger to that kind of matchup, most likely, right? And the other pick that I paired with Ampharos here, this one's a little bit interesting. I'm not sure how well it synergizes with the rest of the team, but I think it could do some valuable things. It's Staraptor. Staraptor is the fastest Pokemon in my draft, at least by natural speed stat. Even though I committed pretty hard to Trick Room, I figured I should not have an all-slow draft. I figured it's important to have that extra dimension of at least something fast, which will come up again in a moment with the next pick. But Staraptor also gives me some more physical offense when my Megas and Clawitzer skew the team more towards special offense. It gives me Intimidate, which could be valuable to Cresselia, which again, I might want to set up with Calm Mind at some point. Cresselia is super bulky on both sides, but if I'm boosting its special defense, having Intimidate support could be valuable. Staraptor also just gives me a fast threat that opponents have to deal with, so shutting down Trick Room is not the end-all be-all. And there may be some other support techs that it could bring to the table as well, but we'll see about that as the season plays out. Might feel like a bit of an unusual fit on the team, but I was looking specifically to add another dimension to the team here, and I think Staraptor does probably a better job than most of the other options I had available. One more double pick as the wheel came around to me one more time. Well, I mean, I get 3 more picks available if I want them, but one more instance where I picked 2 Pokemon together, and I had known for a while what 2 of these were going to be. My 9th round pick was Exeggutor. This is the thing that's faster than Staraptor. Obviously, I have Sun on the team. You can probably guess what the next Pokemon in this draft is, but I have multiple Pokemon that can click Sunny Day anyway. Exeggutor gives me another fast option with the Chlorophyll. It gets moves like Sleep Powder that opponents have to take seriously, so that can make it a little bit harder for them to prep into my team because they have to cover for more than just, you know, Mega Camerupt gets going in Trick Room and that's it. Exeggutor is a 3rd Trick Room setter. It's probably not the greatest for that role because it has overlapping weaknesses with both of the others. But if I get into a matchup where I feel like 2 Trick Room setters is just not enough for some reason, I mean, we'll see if that ever happens, but I do have the option of running all 3. It's another Pokemon with Harvest, so I can do some bulky berry strats, and Exeggutor is itself slow and hard-hitting, so if I'm not running a Chlorophyll set, then it could be a dangerous attacker under Trick Room as well. So I like the flexibility of this Pokemon here, that it can play well in a Trick Room mode, or as a Chlorophyll alternative, or complement a Trick Room mode so that I have something fast outside of Trick Room that messes with opponents somewhat more, right? I considered a few different Chlorophyll users that were all at about the same point value. Like, I've drafted Lilligant twice before in the PDL, and I thought about doing it again here, but I think Exeggutor's extra flexibility and the fact that it does give me 1 more Trick Room setter is a little bit more valuable to me. At least going into this season, and if I find that that's not really holding up over time, I can consider making trades. And the other Pokemon that I paired with Exeggutor, I actually made a mistake here. Remember when I said that way earlier in the draft I thought about Ninetales, but I decided that at 11 points, Ninetales might be kind of expensive for what it is, and so I would probably get better value taking 3-point Vulpix. Well, after that, I tunnel visioned hard into that idea, and at this point, after Exeggutor, you saw on the screen, I had 11 points left. I could have just taken Ninetales, gotten to the 10 Pokemon floor, and ended my draft there. And I think that was a totally reasonable option, and I had tunnel visioned hard onto Vulpix ever since, like, round 4, so I just forgot to think about that option. Like, I just never considered Ninetales again, until I had already locked in the Vulpix point, the Vulpix pick, and then I went, wait, what about Ninetales? Wait, I just forgot to think about that, genuinely. I said this in the Discord, maybe people thought I was joking, I don't know. I really just forgot to think about Ninetales here. But I decided to stick with Vulpix for now anyway. I did have the opportunity to trade it out for Ninetales, and maybe I'll do that later. But, you know, Vulpix being slower might be beneficial on my Trick Room team. It's the only Pokemon I drafted that's not fully evolved, so it has no competition for the Eviolite on this team. Drafting Vulpix instead of Ninetales here does give me the option to take an 11th Pokemon, and that 11th roster slot might be beneficial. There's still some things that my team could use. So I'm going to see how Vulpix does. I'm a little worried that with these stats, it's just not going to be worth bringing to a game ever. But, I mean, Drought is Drought, independent of what Pokemon has it. And I can make changes if Vulpix isn't working out. I just think it's funny, which is why I'm admitting it, that I tunnel visioned so hard earlier that I maybe drafted this Pokemon by mistake is overstating it, but I forgot to think about the obvious alternative before I committed to the pick, but I am committed to it for now. And that did give me the option to take an 11th Pokemon, for which I went with Steelix. Not Mega Steelix, just the regular one. This is another slow Pokemon. It doesn't hit very hard. It is extremely bulky on the physical side. So maybe there's something complementary I can work out there with Cresselia's special bulk and like Klefki's screens and stuff. I have some healing options on the team as well. But mostly I just wanted this to be a bulky steel type to throw at some specific matchups that I'm not certain about without it. Now, maybe I get to prepping for those matchups and I have 6 better Pokemon to use and Steelix is not worthwhile, and in that case, maybe I consider consolidating the Vulpix and Steelix slots into something else. But for now, yeah, Steelix just gives me... Steelix is a Pokemon that has some very exploitable weaknesses, but it also has some very exploitable strengths, so to speak. It's extremely good into a specific range of threats, and just having something to throw at some of those threats I think could be valuable. I could be interested in making a change if I find out that's not actually the case, but that's my speculative thought right now about Steelix. Look at that base defense stat. And with that, the Season 10 Halifax Masquerainmen draft was complete. I think it's a strong team. I think it is committed pretty hard to Trick Room, but that is what I wanted here. And it's just a question of how well I play it from here. I did not get redirection in the draft. That's one thing that was on my checklist that I decided in the end I didn't need that badly. But I think I have a lot of supports to get the Trick Room going, get the attackers going, and I also have some fast options on the team, so I'm not completely dependent on Trick Room all the time. And into the handful of opponents who have weather teams, I haven't committed super hard to the sun stuff with my team, but I do have sun options available to mess with people's, say, rain or hail or sand. Those are all of the alternatives, actually. So I think it's going to be a fun season, hopefully a more successful one than last time, but we'll just have to wait and see. And with that, it's time to meet the rest of the teams. We start with the team that got the first overall pick. The Azure Bay Chatots, the defending champions, here to try to, in fact, defend that title. And unsurprisingly, this coach has drafted a solid, well-rounded, flexible mix of Pokemon. You see the Fire, Water, Grass core. You see the other complementary types with the Lucario and the Crocodile and the Sylveon. You see a lot of Pokemon that can be played in a lot of different ways that are tanky or offensive or bring different supports. Lucario has a bunch of different offensive sets it can run. Crocodile gives the Intimidate support or can try to snowball with Moxie. I'm not sure what they're cooking with Duskmaw, but it's bulky and hard to deal with. Sylveon is one of the best fairy types in the game. They have 2 super interesting megas, right? They don't have any of the really big ticket megas that everybody was clamoring for, but Mega Sceptile and Mega Blastoise, first of all, complement each other really well, especially with Mega Sceptile getting Lightning Rod, so it covers for Blastoise's electric type weakness and Talonflame's electric weakness as well. And then it also covers for Blastoise's other weakness by just double resisting grass attacks, as does Talonflame. So I have put Mega Sceptile, I have the featured spot here again, and I've mostly just put Mega Pokemon, because we're all looking forward to seeing the Mega Pokemon, right? I'm looking forward to seeing what Mega Sceptile does, but actually maybe I should have looked more closely when I was putting the images together at Mega Blastoise, because I think a fair bit of this team could be set up to enable that Pokemon to just tank through opponents, with his supports making it hard to remove. Talonflame was the first overall pick in the draft. This coach explained openly why, that they wanted to take a Pokemon that did something nothing else could. This is Generation 6. Gale Wings is a brand new ability that has not been nerfed yet, so it works even when Talonflame is not at full HP. Talonflame, assuming it's running Gale Wings, just gets priority on all of its flying type moves all the time, so that's going to be crazy to deal with. And just a solid, well-rounded mix of threats otherwise, except I should also mention, I actually didn't catch this myself in the draft, but someone else pointed it out. They also have a Perish Trap mode with Dewgong and Gothorita. Gothorita gets Shadow Tag, Dewgong gets Perish Song. The coach also explained this one, just as they had some points left and saw another mode they could try in case it's of some value. So another one of many flexible options for the Chatots, and the defending champion will definitely be one of the teams to beat as this season plays out. Up next, we have the Book Club. Drafting also a flexible mix of threats, although you can see kind of a rain option for this team, right? They have the Tornadus, which can set Tailwind and can also click the priority rain dance. They have Zapdos, which can go for Thunder in the rain. I don't think it gets Hurricane this gen. Maybe it does. Dragonite gets Hurricane and Thunder if they want to go that direction. Scizor has its Fire weakness covered by Rain. Crawdaunt just hits crazy hard. It doesn't even need Rain to do that, but especially in the rain with those boosted water type attacks. So actually, one of the first things I see looking at this team is a possible manual rain mode. They also have Dugtrio to trap and take out opposing electric types that could threaten Tornadus and Crawdaunt. I don't know if that's specifically what they have in mind for it, but it's a pretty funny option there. And of course, Dugtrio can pair with any of Zapdos, Tornadus, Carnivine, Duskull, Dragonite. I think Gengar still has Levitate in this generation. So they have a ton of ground immunities. Actually, I could see them having a game plan where they just bring like Choice Band Dugtrio. Get Tailwind up if they can. And then they have a ton of ground immunities that can sit there next to Dugtrio while it clicks Earthquake. And that makes it hard to bring electric types into this team. And then you have Tornadus and Crawdaunt. And even Zapdos and Scizor benefit from electric types being removed. So they have some really interesting game plans available for them here. And those are just a couple of directions they can go with it, right? Dragonite, Scizor, Gengar, Zapdos, these are flexible enough Pokemon that there are a lot of different game plans they can bring. But those are some interesting ideas. And I haven't even mentioned their only Mega, which is Mega Lopunny. Definitely one of the better Megas, having that Scrappy so that its normal and fighting stabs can hit Ghost types. It's even one of the few Pokemon that can fake out a Ghost. And it's just going to hit very hard and go crazy. And I don't even see how it neatly fits into some of the modes I was talking about, because it doesn't have to. It's just their best Pokemon. It's gonna get KOs. So this looks like it'll be a super fun team, actually. Next, we have the Minnesota Marshadows. Newcomer to the league, but someone I've known to be a pretty good player for a while. And this is the Mega Charizard Y Sun team. They're pairing Charizard with Garchomp, much like last season's Pendragon United. Garchomp making Charizard a lot harder to deal with by covering some of its weaknesses, giving it complementary physical offense with its special offense, menacing the rock types and sometimes dragon types that give Charizard trouble, and of course Charizard being a flying type, Garchomp can spam Earthquake next to it. So very powerful offensive duo. We saw that in Gen 8 last season, and it should go crazy now this season in Gen 6 with Mega Charizard Y, hitting harder than regular Charizard and setting up the sun for itself. They have Prankster support and Sableye. I haven't looked into what moves Sableye gets in this gen, but I assume a lot of the same stuff with like screens and its own sunny day probably. They have Melodic as the water type, which is a pretty interesting option. I think Melodic probably gets Coil in this generation. Sorry, I haven't played Gen 6 in a while, and I didn't check all of what every single roster can do before I did the recap, so I'm going to be speculating a little bit sometimes, but I'm sure you, the viewer, will be as well. But yeah, Melodic could run a bulky setup set, Hypnosis support, Orgo special, offensive. Its water type attacks will be nerfed by Charizard, but otherwise it complements Charizard pretty well. They have Trick Room options as well. Conkeldurr is one of the strongest offensive threats in Trick Room. Metagross is not crazy slow, but it can hit hard in Trick Room, or it could even run like Agility and participate in a fast offensive mode. They have options there. I'm not sure if Jumpluff gets Tailwind in this gen. I think it probably doesn't, actually, but does get Chlorophyll and disruptive options like Sleep Powder and Rage Powder, so it complements the Mega Charizard Y pretty well. And when I play this team, which I think I do, I'll have to double check all the support options that Jumpluff gets. I'm not certain that it doesn't get Tailwind, but Tailwind is not as widely distributed this gen. I think it probably does. You know what? I'm not sure. I'll check I'll find out when I have to, or when they use it on someone else. They have a couple of interesting fairy types in Aromatisse and Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime was priced pretty low. A lot of people in the Discord talked about what a bargain that was for this team. And hey, they have Fairy Dragon Steel with Garchomp, either Fairy and Metagross. And then Mischievous, I guess, is reasonably bulky with an Eviolite. I think it can set Trick Room or mess with opposing Trick Room. It gives them another ground immunity to put next to Garchomp, as does Jumpluff. Honestly, even Magnet Rise Metagross if they want to run that, although it's probably not the best use of a move slot. But I can see Mischievous being a sneaky good support for this team for sure. So another really scary one. People have drafted very well all around, I think. There are a ton of threats with a lot of interesting flexible modes that they can run. I think that pattern is going to hold up, although we move now to the Edmonton Exeggcutes, and this team went in a little bit of a different direction. And this is where I have to clarify. When I said earlier that Smeargle was mostly banned with an asterisk, the Exeggcutes are coached by the Raymer King, coach of past PDL teams like the Alberta Arcanine, I don't remember what else. Sorry, Raymer King. You change your team name every season. I've forgotten most of them, I think. This is a coach who really likes Smeargle and really likes trying to make Smeargle work offensively. If you remember the Population Bomb Smeargle from past seasons, or the Mind Reader Lock-On Sheer Cold Smeargle from before, that was the Raymer King. And so there was some talk going into the draft. Smeargle was going to be banned, and I think this started as a bit, and then somehow it became real. The Raymer King was kind of asking for special permission to draft Smeargle, and people went along with the bit. Honestly, it took me a while to realize that it had turned serious, and by that point I think it actually was implemented. The Raymer King did get that special permission. This Smeargle is not allowed to run Dark Void. It was priced at 15 points. Only the Raymer King was allowed to draft it, and it had to be drafted with the first round pick. But, subject to those conditions, the Raymer King agreed. And there was, I think, talk of not allowing Smeargle to use any status moves at all. I don't know how they ended up with just no Dark Void, but I trust the Raymer King to go crazy with offensive Smeargle and not go for heavy optimizations that drive the rest of us mad. I think the bit is going to be fun to watch this season. I think that Smeargle is going to be clicking stuff like, I don't know, Egg Bomb, or Barrage is the move I'm thinking of, I think. Because there's no Population Bomb in this game. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes up. And it's probably not, like, best practice to have a special exception from the draft rules for a specific coach, but by the time I realized people were serious, it was already done. And I do trust that the Raymer King won't abuse this, so probably shouldn't be done again, but I'm alright with it. So Smeargle is the featured piece on this team. I have broken the pattern of showing the Mega in the bottom left because this was the only coach in the whole league who was allowed to draft Smeargle, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with it. As for the rest of the team, I feel like I just keep saying over and over, solid, flexible, well-rounded mix. I mean, this is, for the most part, pretty clearly a fast offensive team, right? Blaziken is all fast offense. Superior has other options, but mostly it's fast offense, trying to snowball with Contrary Leaf Storm. They have a couple of... Oh, hang on, I'm getting a phone call. One moment. Okay, yeah, that phone call was somewhat important. Sorry for the interruption, is what it is. Where was I? High Octane offensive team, Blaziken, Superior, not Smeargle as a High Octane attacker, but I'm sure they will try to use it that way. Therian Thunderous hits super hard. I'm surprised they don't have an Earthquake spammer with all these flying types, unless Smeargle is the Earthquake spammer, but they also have redirection support from Sentret. They have the complementary Electric, Ground, Ice coverage, and Thunderous, Gliscor, Weavile. I don't know what Barbaracle does for this team. Does it get Shell Smash? I think it might. Vivillon gives them another redirection option if it gets Rage Powder in this gen. It can set up with Quiver Dance, it can Sleep Powder things. Shedinja is tricky in a counter team draft format, and I think the Raymer King ended up regretting this pick, because every opponent's going to have something for Shedinja. Shedinja's been interesting in some VGC formats because you're not necessarily specifically preparing for it, and then you get into some rough positions against it. I don't know if that's going to carry over here. Okay, at the time of recording, they've already dropped Shedinja, but we'll deal with that next week. And then Audino is a strong support Pokemon as well. So the modes here are a bit less clear to me, but they definitely have a mix of offensive threats that could be hard to prep for. And then there's Smeargle. Anyway, next is the Yosemite Yolteons. This is who took Mega Gengar before I could get it. And this coach, I think, is at their best when they have a solid mix of bulky, powerful Pokemon that complement each other, and that is exactly what we see here. You got Fire, Water, Grass with Gyarados, Volcarona, and Breloom. Those are excellent Pokemon of those types. Gyarados is bulky. It has a surprising amount of support options. It also can hit extremely hard. It even has the option to set up with Dragon Dance if you can make that happen. Volcarona, bulky, powerful, support options, can set up with Quiver Dance, can hit hard. Breloom can hit hard with Technician boosted stuff, especially like the Stab Mach Punch, but also is one of the few Spore users in the game and the fastest one. So those Pokemon are all very flexible in how they play. They're hard to deal with, and they complement each other extremely well. Notably, while Gyarados and Volcarona are both very weak to Rock, Breloom as a fighting type resists Rock. It also resists Gyarados' electric weakness. I don't need to explain type synergy, but Breloom is a really interesting complement to the other two because it's a Pokemon that the opponent can't ignore. But then that gives them an opportunity while the opponent is dealing with Breloom, which, yeah, it commands attention in a way that a lot of grass types don't. But then Volcarona might get a free turn to click the Quiver Dance button, or Gyarados to click Dragon Dance, or even like Taunt or something. And then they also have their Fairy Dragon Steel Core with Aggron, Hydreigon, and Gardevoir. Gardevoir hits deceptively hard. Hydreigon hits hard. Aggron is very tanky. It has some exploitable weaknesses, but in some positions it'll be hard to remove. They have Raichu, which gives them fast fake-out support. It gives them an electric type, which I like with Fire Water Grass, and it specifically gives them Lightning Rod, so they can redirect electric type attacks away from Gyarados. I think Gyarados is likely to be one of the main carries for this team, and they do have a couple of electric resists in Breloom and Hydreigon, as well as an immunity in Gible if they want to bring that to games, but the Lightning Rod support I think will be very powerful for Gyarados. And all of that's not even mentioning Mega Gengar, which is kind of their default strongest Pokemon, and also traps opponents on the field. And that very nicely complements some of the modes I'm talking up with the Fire, Water, Grass options, and even with Aggron, right? Because, like, Mega Aggron, it's kind of like Steelix, and that is very weak... Sorry, regular Aggron. This is not Mega Aggron. It's kind of like Steelix, and that is very weak to some things, but it completely shuts other things down. If Gengar can trap an opponent in a position that's not favorable to Aggron, and Aggron can set up or do whatever it wants to do. Or Gengar traps an opponent in an unfavorable position against, again, Dragon Dance Gyarados, or Quiver Dance Volcarona, or even Swords Dance Breloom, or Breloom just spamming Spore. Like, opponents are going to have to be really careful, right? Because there are a ton of different threats to prepare for, and if Gengar catches them out of position, even their prep might not be enough. So this is going to be a really fun team to watch, and that's not even mentioning the Ditto, which can steal an opponent's threat and use it against them too. This is going to be a scary team. A lot of these are going to be scary teams. I feel like it's getting old that I keep saying it, but it's true. Should be a competitive season. Next we have the Sinister Hand, newcomer coach to this league, but I'm told a strong player. This is where Mega Mawile went, another of the stronger Mega Evolutions, getting that huge power. Does it have huge power or pure power? They do the same thing. I'm just curious about which name is on the tin here. But it has one of those abilities with that Steel and Fairy typing, hitting very hard with physical attacks and having some weaknesses, but not a ton for opponents to hit back into. I actually, when I was thinking about doing a rain team, I was thinking about Mega Mawile because you could get rid of the fire weakness. This coach instead has gone in a sand direction. They took their second Mega immediately, round 2, and got Mega Tyranitar, which is, you know, Tyranitar with 100 more stats. It's pretty scary. Minus an item slot, but Mega Tyranitar hits... I had Mega Tyranitar in a draft league a long time ago before I ever joined the PDL. It hits extremely hard. It's super bulky for being an offensive Pokemon. And then they pair that with the Sand Rush Stoutland, and they have some serious physical threats, along with the Mega Mawile as well, right? Mega Mawile won't take sand damage. It and Tyranitar are both weak to ground, but otherwise, they cover some of each other's weaknesses, like Mawile resists grass, Tyranitar resists fire. Mawile can offensively threaten fighting types that would otherwise cause a lot of trouble for Tyranitar. They do have the same problem that I have, where both of their Megas are weak to ground. And actually, they don't have a ground resist. But a lot of ground types are physical. They do have 2 Intimidate options in Stoutland and Scrafty, though I imagine Stoutland will probably more often want to run Sand Rush. Scrafty gives them a really solid support Pokemon, especially in a generation where Incineroar doesn't exist, doing some of the same things with Intimidate and Fake Out. They have Fungus, able to redirect attacks, although not Earthquake, and threaten things with Spore. They can go in a Trick Room direction, right? They have strong Trick Room setters in Dusclops and Chandelure, and then Chandelure hits very hard in Trick Room. Mega Tyranitar is fairly slow. Mega Mawile is not crazy fast either. So they have a pretty strong Trick Room mode, but they also have a Tailwind option with Suicune being one of the bulkier, harder to overwhelm Tailwind setters, and giving them some complementary coverage as well as setting that up for Pokemon like Mega Mawile and Mega Tyranitar. Honestly, kind of like how Blood Moon Ursaluna is a fairly slow Pokemon that does well in Trick Room, but is also fast enough to take advantage of Tailwind if the matchup is favorable. This team can play the same kind of Tail Room game with the Mawile and the Tyranitar and the Chandelure. And then they have Regigigas. I don't know. Let's talk about Clefable first. Clefable is a good fairy type. It has redirection. It also has other options. It can set up. It can just throw off Moonblasts. And Moonblast could be pretty helpful to this team into some threats. And then they have Regigigas. Neutralizing Gas does not exist in this generation. I don't think anything on this team... Actually, maybe Fungus gets Worry Seed. There are other ways to change Regigigas' ability, right? Actually change it instead of just suppressing it. I think Fungus might get Worry Seed. I'll have to check if I play this team, which would change Regigigas' ability to Insomnia so that it wouldn't have Slow Start anymore. I don't know if any of these Pokemon get Skill Swap, but I would guess one or two of them do. That'll be something to check on if I'm preparing for this specific matchup. But then even if they don't get rid of the Slow Start, Regigigas has a ton of stats and is of some value as a defensive Pokemon with stuff like Wide Guard and Thunder Waves. So it'll be interesting to see what they have in mind. They probably don't bring it very often. It was their last pick. But yeah, Tail Room offense looks very scary from this team, with the one caveat that I am noticing a ground weakness. They have no resist, and both their Megas are weak to ground, and so is Chandelure, which is their next strongest offensive Pokemon. Fungus and Suicune will be of some help into that, but it'll be interesting to see how they handle it. Next is the Grounded Punching Bags, making their return after having to drop from the league last season. Good to see them back. Good to see a Mega Pokemon that is not one of my absolute favorites, but one that I like quite a lot, and I'm always excited to see do well. Mega Manectric. Going crazy with that fast Electric-type damage, and of course, after Mega Evolving, it has Intimidate. They also have another possible Intimidate user in Salamence. What do I see with this team? Yeah, they have a lot of high-caliber offense, right? They do have Fairy Dragon Steel with Salamence, Klinklang, and Slurpuff. Does Slurpuff get Belly Drum in this generation? I remember being surprised to find out last gen that it didn't. I don't know. I didn't check. I'm not sure exactly what the main modes are for this team. But it looks like it has a lot of threats. I mean, Manectric being only weak to ground and pairing that with Salamence or even Crobat to handle ground threats, or Rage Powder Tangela, or even just Samurott as an offensive check, right? There's a lot there. Gigalith does not get Sandstream in this generation, but they don't really have a Sand mode to play with anyway. But Samurott is a reasonably strong and flexible water type, and Infernape is a fast fire type that can hit hard on either side of the spectrum. They do have those ground immunities to complement Manectric. They have a strong fairy type in Slurpuff that can become a giant threat if you leave it alone too long. They have another interesting setup threat with steel typing and Klinklang. Tangela able to give redirection support to those. Medicham hits super hard with pure power. So I see a lot of strong Pokemon. This is one of the ones where I'm going to have to find out as the season goes on exactly how they fit together. But there's definitely some potential for a dynamic and hard to prep for game plan here with this team for sure. I don't know why they drafted Charmander, though. That one's a mystery to me. Next, we have the Westwego Whiscash. I think I said that correctly. Someone please let me know if I didn't. This team uses, speaking of high-octane offense, Therian Landorus, Terrakion, and Mega Metagross with their first 3 picks. They want to hit hard, and that's it. They want to hit. They want powerful physical offense that is going to be hard for opponents to stand up to. They're asking of every opponent, what is your answer to 3 of the best physical attackers in the game? And we better all have good answers, right? They also have Gastrodon, so Landorus and Terrakion are both weak to water, and could have trouble breaking through some bulky water types, and Mega Metagross is not super helpful into that. It takes neutral damage from water. I think it gets Thunder Punch, but it's not the most helpful thing. So Gastrodon, I think, makes a lot of sense for this team, being able to redirect water-type attacks away from those Pokemon. That does make it harder to just kind of slap on one answer and try to deal with multiple physical threats just with your bulky water or something, right? And then Ludicolo can help them, and Luxray can help them play well into opposing water types as well. Luxray gives them Intimidate and some interesting support options, so they're going to try to overwhelm with their physical offense while you have not such an easy time doing the same with yours. Togepi gives them redirection. It doesn't do a whole lot else. It could be a helpful anti-trick room piece, but Follow Me is the main thing. But Follow Me is pretty scary when you're trying to knock, when your opponent's using it against you and preventing you from quickly knocking out their Landorus, Terrakion, or Mega Metagross, right? I mean, I don't have to overthink this. These are giant threats. They also have Sneasel, which I think gets beat up. Maybe not in this gen. I'm not 100% sure. But that's the obvious candidate here to activate the Justified on Terrakion, give Terrakion a few boosts, and just have it go even crazier. This is just big physical offense, the team. Luxray is an interesting support. Togepi's not the best, but it could be of some use. Gastrodon makes a ton of sense for this team. These Pokemon are all reasonably fast, but they're not super fast, so Porygon2 flipping the script on an opponent with Trick Room could be very powerful in some matchups. Actually, I'm not sure how fast Mega Metagross is. It might be faster than I think, but they also don't have to Mega Evolve it, right? And the regular Metagross is not crazy fast. Illumise gets Prankster. I don't know if it gets Tailwind in this generation. Again, Tailwind is not as widely distributed as it is in later gens. I'm also not sure what they have for Fake Out support. I'm pretty sure Ludicolo gets Fake Out. I'm not sure whether Sneasel does yet. I kind of wish I'd looked up whether Illumise gets Tailwind, because it feels like that could make a big difference to this team, and I am not sure right now. But you know what? Maybe we'll just find out when the matches start. The Denver Dewotts are next. This team has just a really solid core. I mean, this is another sand team, right? They have the Tyranitar Excadrill duo, so that's extremely powerful, extremely hard to deal with right off the bat. Excadrill outspeeding most things in a sandstorm, and then just hitting extremely hard. And Tyranitar being a bulky, hard to remove offensive partner that hits very hard in its own right. Just one of the better weather modes consistently across the generations. And they also have Heatran, which is a tanky fire type that doesn't take sand damage, so it gets a little bit harder to remove when the sand is chipping opponents down. All of those Pokemon are weak to fighting, but then their Mega is Mega Gardevoir, which ought to clean up fighting types for them very nicely, double resisting with that Psychic and Fairy typing and being a massive offensive threat into fighting types with both of those stabs. Hard to find a better fighting type answer than that. They also have a Moongus resisting fighting, complementing Heatran extremely well. The synergy defensively between those two is pretty excellent. The one tricky thing here is Amoonguss is a grass type that doesn't resist ground, but then they have three flying type, or not three flying types, but three ground immunities in Murkrow, Noivern, and Rotom. So they have switch-in options. They have a bit of a ground weakness as well, but they have more switch-in options than some people with kind of ground-weak teams do. And then otherwise, yeah, Heatran generally pairs very well with grass types in a tanky core, and I don't think it'll be any exception with Amoonguss, right? Amoonguss even covering its fighting weakness, and Heatran covering Amoonguss's psychic weakness. Amoonguss does not get Pollen Puff in this generation because that move doesn't exist yet, so it won't be able to help keep Heatran or Tyranitar healthy in that way. But switching in on some of their obvious weaknesses, like fighting and water, giving them cover with Rage Powder and Spore, there's a ton that it could do, and this core could be very hard to break because Amoonguss is here. And again, Mega Gardevoir makes a ton of sense as an offensive complement to Tyranitar and Excadrill, because those fighting types are not going to have the easy time checking that mode that they want to. So this is going to be a hard team to break through. Extremely threatening. It has Tailwind options with Noivern. I don't know if Murkrow gets Tailwind in this generation. Again, it's not that what... This is going to have to be one of the main things I check every week playing a Gen 6 draft. Does this thing that gets Tailwind now get it back then? But Murkrow certainly has some Prankster support options. I'm sure it gets Thunder Wave, even if it doesn't get Tailwind, so it can bring them some speed control. It'd be interesting to see what it brings to the table. Eat Rotom. So it's another Levitate. It's an electric type, which they don't have otherwise. It has some support techs like Will-O-Wisp and Thunder Wave. And I think Trick to disable opponent supports. Will-O-Wisp is interesting because Tyranitar is pretty specially bulky with the Rock-type Sand boost. I don't know Mega Gardevoir's stats off the top of my head, but I think it's probably bulkier on the special side than the physical side. So Will-O-Wisp could actually do a lot for this team. So yeah, it's pretty clear what their main modes are. It's Sand offense, and it's Heatran, Amoonguss, tank everything. But they have good pieces to play both of those modes, and it's going to be hard to deal with. Oshawott, I think, is basically just a mascot pick, even though the mascot is Dewott. Oshawott was probably cheaper, I'm not sure. I have no idea what Gulpin is doing here, though. Maybe they're planning something with that. Maybe it's their favorite Pokemon. Couldn't tell you. New coach. Hasn't come up what their favorite Pokemon is. Next we have the cooler London Vespiquens. I don't think I need to say who the coach is here. This is the newest incarnation of the cooler Dreamyard Darkrai. They probably will want me to say the cooler London Vespiquens, right? They'll probably insist on the same kind of thing. I'll see if I can remember. The London Vespiquens reference is a little bit lost in to history here. Basically, a team called the London Vespiquens signed up for the draft and then didn't actually participate. Dropped before the draft was over. And so, once again, everyone's favorite PDL villain comes in as a replacement coach and hijacks someone else's brand, this time taking over the actual team that their name is riffing on. And then immediately they drafted as many Follow Me Pokemon as they could right away, basically just trying to take Redirection away from everyone else. This is one of the reasons that I didn't end up taking Redirection, because I kind of wanted Pachirisu or Furret, and the cooler London Vespiquens came in and said, nope, nobody else is getting any of that. No Togetic either. Drafting both Purloin and Liepard is also crazy work. They have a ton of disruptive Prankster support options that they can run twice over any week that they want to. And then Mega Alakazam already is a very strong starting point for their Mega, right? Because they have 3 Follow Me users, and they have Prankster, Taunt, Torment, Thunderwave, whatever you want, from 2 different cats. So Mega Alakazam is kind of the definition of a glass cannon. It hits extremely hard, but it doesn't take hits very well. But they have a lot of ways to prevent it from taking hits. You want to use Spread Move? They also have Wide Guard on Hitmontop. So as much as this is an obvious troll job, just stacking up all these Follow Me Pokemon, there actually might prove to be some competitive merit to it, because they've just thrown as many supports at the wall as they can to make Mega Alakazam extremely difficult to remove. And then after they've done all of that, they also drafted the most expensive Pokemon of the draft, Mega Kangaskhan, considered by the people who did the tiering to be the best Pokemon there was available. And for good reason. It has full strength pre-nerf parental bond with Fake Out, with Seismic Toss, with Sucker Punch, I think with Power Up Punch as well, getting 2 attack boosts each time. It's going to be an absolute menace, and it plays somewhat differently from Mega Alakazam, hitting on the physical side and having more bulk. So you want to come up with everything you can to handle Mega Alakazam plus a million supports. Maybe you leave yourself too weak to Mega Kangaskhan, right? And then Mega Kangaskhan also, it doesn't have to Mega Evolve immediately, so it can take advantage of Scrappy as a Kangaskhan to fake out a Ghost type if it wants, which also can create an opening for Mega Alakazam to do something if you bring both of them and you don't want to Mega Evolve the Kangaskhan. So there's a lot here. I haven't even talked about Durant. My honest guess, Durant is a strong Steel type, but my honest guess as to why they drafted it is entrainment shenanigans. They could give Hustle to something else if they want. I think more likely they give Truant to an opponent. I think if Durant can do that in this generation, I know in some gens it gets entrainment and Truant, you know, Slacking's ability that actively nerfs the Pokemon, so it can just distribute that to opponents, which fits the League Villain Troll vibe. I'm guessing Vespiquen is just a mascot pick. And I don't know why they drafted Dewott. We'll see if they're cooking something with that. But Mega Alakazam plus triple Follow Me plus double Prankster, if we ever actually see that mode, is going to go crazy. And be unlike anything I've ever seen before, so I'm looking forward to it. Then we have the Ryangreenblue Porygon2s. This is the Hail team of this draft. They took Mega Abomasnow as their only Mega. It does set Hail, both before and after Mega Evolving. It's slow, it plays nicely in Trick Room. I was looking at it at one point in the draft myself, but I figured Mega Camerupt would be stronger as a Pokemon and into a lot of the matchups I would get. But they're looking to take full advantage of the Hail here. They have the Glaceon, probably gets Snow Cloak. I can't remember if that's his hidden ability, but probably gets it either way. And then hits very hard with Blizzard. Both of them hit very hard with Blizzard. So does Aurorus, I'm sure. So they have a lot of options to do Blizzard spam, get some freezes, or just hit things very hard with Ice-type damage, which is a pretty solid type of damage to have. Then they have all that complemented by the Wash Rotom, so they have something that can come in on Fire-type attacks, that can help remove some of the Fire and Rock-type threats, maybe burn some threats. be disruptive in the way that Rotom is. They have their own Follow Me with Togetic. They have Trick Room options with Bronzong can set Trick Room. Mega Abomasnow is strong in Trick Room. So is Aegislash, which hits extremely hard or is extremely bulky depending on its form, and is also very slow. I think Jellicent can set Trick Room as well. It is a bulky Pokemon that's hard to deal with, that covers some of the weaknesses that the 3 ice types all share. I don't know if Aurorus gets Snow Warning in this generation. I think it probably doesn't. But that just means they can use like Refrigerate, Hyper Beam, right? Maybe I'm confused. I don't remember which one's its special, which one's its hidden ability. I think it's probably Snow Warning. Mienshao gives them some support options, Fake Out, Wide Guard, and stuff. And then I don't know what Chatot is here to do. Chatter and confuse things to make opponents rage quit? Maybe, but the main thing I see here is Blizzard spam with 3 ice types, including their Mega, a Trick Room option with that ice type Mega being slow, and then just a bunch of solid support Pokemon to tie everything together. Next we have the Nothing Burger returning to the league. I didn't really take a look at this whole draft when I was putting the image together. I'm not entirely sure what I'm seeing here. I mean, the Trick Room mode is pretty obvious, right? They have Claydol. I don't know if Bayonet gets Trick Room. Maybe it does. Mega Bayonet gets Prankster, so that's what, -6 priority Trick Room? I don't think that ever comes into play, but it's a funny thing to have if you're confused by what I'm saying there. Prankster adds 1 priority to any status move, and Trick Room has -7 priority, the lowest in the game. I think -6 catches it up to Roar and Whirlwind. I don't know if Mega Bayonet even learns Trick Room, but Claydol certainly does, and they have a very strong Trick Room attacker and a Scavalier. Another one that I kind of thought about but decided I didn't need. They have Machamp, which hits very hard and is slow. It's not the best Trick Room fighting type, but for late in the draft, it's a pretty decent one to get. They have Trapinch, which is maybe the slowest Pokemon in the whole draft. Actually, I think Shuckle is the slowest Pokemon in the whole draft. And even though Trapinch is unevolved, it has base 100 attack, same as Flagon, and it has Arena Trap to trap grounded targets, so kind of like a budget Mega Gengar, they can make it hard for opponents to position around an offensive mode with even like maybe a Swords Dance Scavalier or Bulk Up Machamp or something, or just going crazy with damage with a Scavalier, right? I was going to say they don't have a ground immunity. They actually do. Claydol gets Levitate, so Trapinch can click Earthquake next to that. Whimsicott gives them a Tailwind option. I'm not sure exactly what for. I mean, Greninja is fast. It's not the strongest. It's reasonably strong. Dragalge is just a strong Pokemon, so is Machamp. Maybe they get sub-matchups where they want to get those going in Tailwind, but I think the Trick Room is more interesting for this team. I have no idea what Wailord brings to the table. It gets Water Spout, but I don't think it's very strong. Shuckle is a very slow, very bulky Pokemon. Shuckle gets Guard Split, too. I think that's a thing in this generation. So it can average its defenses, which are some of the highest in the whole game, with somebody else, and make some other Pokemon immediately a lot more bulky. I don't know what the game plans with that would be with this team, but I could see like Turbo Bulky Dragalge or Tangrowth. Maybe not. Yeah, I don't know how this team comes together, and I don't really know what Mega Bayonet is doing here either. This is one that I'm just going to have to see in action to start to figure it out, other than the Trick Room stuff, which is pretty clear, but I don't know what a lot of the rest of these Pokemon are meant to do. But no doubt they were drafted with a plan in mind. I'm looking forward to seeing it. The East Coast Espurr have returned. One of the scariest teams last season, and looking like a very strong one this season as well. Immediately splashed some serious points on 2 very high-value picks, 25-point Mega Salamence, and then Incarnate Thundurus, which was also definitely up there at the higher point values. I don't remember the exact number. Thundurus is another Pokemon that I thought maybe I would just take and then figure everything else out later, but I didn't go that route. I went 2 Pokemon combination instead, but just having Thundurus even just able to paralyze and confuse things while Mega Salamence goes crazy with Air Elite boosted Double Edge or Hyper Voice is already going to be a lot for teams to deal with, right? And then, okay, they probably want to throw their Flying Resist at that. Rock types are strong into both of these, right? They're both weak to Rock. Electric types are good into these two. This is Gen 6, so Electric types cannot be paralyzed. But then that's where Swampert comes in. What matches up well into Rock types and Electric types? Swampert. They have a Firewater Grass Core with Ferrothorn, Swampert, and Blaziken. All of those Pokemon kind of just make electric and rock types sad. They have a Firewater Grass Core of Blaziken's a strong offensive Pokemon. Swampert is tanky. Ferrothorn is very bulky. They all complement. They all cover each other's weaknesses very well, but they also all make a difference into the weaknesses of the first two picks and highest value ones, Salamence and Thundurus. So that's going to be a hard team to break. Salamence is going to hit extremely hard. It's going to be supported very well by Thundurus, or Thundurus could go offensive. It's a very flexible Pokemon. And you can't just throw whatever the best things into those specific Pokemon you have at them, because a bunch of their other strongest Pokemon are going to make those Pokemon... I mean, this is how the game works, right? You just have to play Pokemon in the end, but... yeah, they have a Firewater Grass Core that covers also the weaknesses of those main two. And then Florges gives them a strong Fairy type. Clefairy gives them Follow Me and Friend Guard, which makes something like Mega Salamence or Thundurus all the harder to remove. Or they can go bulky Fairy type, Florges, Moonblast stuff. Also, Ferrothorn is a tanky setup Pokemon that's hard to remove, with its main issue being a huge fire weakness. And guess who resists fire? Blaziken, Swampert, and Mega Salamence. So they could run a game plan focused on Ferrothorn, and there's a lot that's hard to deal with there too. You want to hit its fighting weakness? Good luck with that. Into Salamence, Thundurus, Florges, and especially Follow Me, Clefairy. Then Espurr is a mascot and favorite Pokemon pick. Meowstic kind of seems like an extension of the Espurr pick, but it also is a prankster support that can set screens and stuff, which makes bulky Pokemon like Swampert, Ferrothorn, Salamence, which by the way gets Intimidate before it Mega Evolves, all the harder to remove. And then Cottony is another prankster support. It does not get Tailwind, but as we saw last season, it can still go crazy with like Cotton Spore or some other prankster options. You can't sleep on it. And then this is my team. But that's not all. I've been keeping one piece of information in my back pocket so far. I called this the biggest PDL season yet, and I was referring to the number of teams as well as the Mega Pokemon. Record PDL signups this season for the very first time in the league's history, more than 16, and because of that, the decision was made to have not just one pool of players, but split the field into two pools. And I'm not sure exactly how the playoffs work this season, but I believe there will be a final between the winners of the pools for the PDL Championship. So everything I've talked about up to this point, my team and the 13 other teams with it, that is Pool A. But then there are also 10 teams in Pool B with their own dock, with their own draft board, able to draft all the same Pokemon that we could, but then exclusive within their pool. And before anyone asks, why 14 and 10 instead of 12 and 12? The answer is originally it was 14 and 12, but a couple of people ghosted the draft and were dropped. And once the draft is started, because each Pokemon is supposed to be exclusive within each pool, and some Pokemon have been picked already, it's not really practical to try to move teams over. So 14 and 10 it is. It might make things a tiny bit lopsided, like a Pool B coach has less competition to get through to get to the final, just by nature of there being a smaller number of players there, and less opportunity cost for each of their picks. It wouldn't shock me if on average Pool B teams are a little stronger, although there's so many good Pokemon that I'm not even sure that will happen. But even if there is a small advantage there, I don't think it's a big deal. It's going to be fine. But that means there are 10 more teams to meet before we're done here. Because again, I've only done Pool A so far. That's the one I'm in. But here's Pool B, and let's see how some of these teams are similar to what we've seen before and how they're different. First, Pendragon United are back once again. One of the top teams of the last two seasons, still chasing their first PDL championship. And they've drafted some interesting stuff. Mega Salamence off the board in both pools. I believe Mega Kangaskhan was not drafted in Pool B, but Mega Salamence is right here. This time, I guess in a Fairy Dragon Steel Core with Aegislash and Togekiss, so different supports around it, different complementary partners, but still just a very strong group overall. Togekiss with that Follow Me support, redirecting threats away from Salamence, Aegislash being just a massively strong tanky Pokemon that demands attention, as does Salamence, while playing a slower game. They complement each other type-wise, obviously. And then both Salamence and Togekiss are able to come in on ground-type attacks that threaten Aegislash and take no damage from them. Each of them also covers another of Aegislash's weaknesses, and Aegislash does pretty well covering their weaknesses too. So Aegislash and Mega Salamence are the obvious strongest Pokemon here, and Togetic is a great support for both of them. But then they actually drafted Mega Gallade before Mega Salamence, so I don't know what game plans are coming for Mega Gallade, but I'm looking forward to finding out. You got the Fake-Out support from Raichu, you got just a strong physical threat, again, in Entei. Let's see, what else? Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what some of the Pokemon like Entei, Sneasel, and Nidoking bring to this team. I mean, Nidoking can... With sheer force, it probably wants to go special, but it can click Earthquake next to either of the flying types. But I doubt that's the main thing it's here to do. Yamask, I'm guessing, gets Trick Room. Because Cofagrigus certainly does. So that's a Trick Room setter they can use with Aegislash. Maybe some of their other Pokemon that are not super fast, like Nidoking and Entei. They're not very slow, but maybe in the right matchup. You can pay something off there. Yeah, Raichu gets Fake Out. It gets Lightning Rod to protect Togetic. Togetic is the only electric weakness on this team, right? But that's something. And then the last two picks, Minun and Clang, should be a lot of fun. I believe Clang does get plus. And of course, Minun has minus. So there's no plusle here, but they can run plus and minus. I'm guessing that's just a silly thing they picked up at the end of their draft to see if they can do something with it. And more likely, we'll see game plans focused on... Again, the core here that I really like is Togekiss, Aegislash, and Salamence. That looks like a very strong core. But Mega Gallade was drafted before Mega Salamence, so we'll see what they're cooking with that. Of course, they don't have to Mega Evolve the Salamence, they just have to bring the Mega Stone. So they could use Salamence's Intimidate support and just use the stats that it has even without Mega Evolving in a game plan with Mega Gallade. So there's some flexibility there, but how some of the other pieces combine, we'll figure out as we watch the season play out. But Pendragon United has been very strong even when their drafts are not obvious to me and how they work before, so I'm looking forward to this for sure. Next, the Ontario Oguris are also returning. I have featured Mega Sharpedo in the bottom left because, unlike Mega Gardevoir, it was not drafted in Pool A. This is one of my favorite things, actually, about Pool B, that they drafted a lot of Megas that we didn't in Pool A. It'd be interesting to see what they do. Mega Sharpedo is pretty straightforward in how it plays. It gets Speed Boost before it Mega Evolves, and then I think... What's the ability called? Strong Jaw or something after? So you protect at least once to get a Speed Boost. Do they have redirection? They actually do, because Lucario gets Follow Me in this generation. That's something I've been forgetting to call out until just now. So they could use Lucario to even, or Kangaskhan Fake Out to even get a second speed boost in some situations, maybe. And then you Mega Evolve the Sharpedo and hit very hard with it. But that's a late pick for them. More of their game plans probably will focus on the Mega Gardevoir. And they have strong Tailwind offense with Tornadus. Landorus can click Earthquake next to Tornadus. Right? And it hits extremely hard, but it's not especially fast, so it can benefit from Tailwind. It's going to take, I think, a lot of coaches some time to get used to non-dynamic speed in this generation, including me. It's going to take me some time to get used to it. But position that right, and Landorus and Tailwind should go crazy. Gardevoir also, I think, will get Telepathy before it Mega Evolves, so you can click Earthquake next to that if you haven't Mega Evolved it yet, or else Gardevoir hits very hard once it's Mega Evolved. It gets big spread damage with... It gets Pixelate for its ability, right? So Pixelate Hyper Voice. With the trade-off of not being especially fast. So that's another very strong attacker in Tailwind. You have Lucario offering complementary coverage or, again, Follow Me support. I forgot until this point in the draft recap that Lucario gets Follow Me this gen. Charizard is another Pokemon you could put next to Landorus that... will hit very hard under the right circumstances. Tornadus, I believe, does get Sunny Day. I mean, it certainly does in Gen 9. I think it does in Gen 6. But then Charizard also is immune to the Landorus Earthquake, so you have another partner there. And it can hit hard with special attacks, especially in the sun, and cover some of the things that give Landorus trouble. Jellicent is a Pokemon we saw the Oguris do well with, I think, last season. It's a bulky water type to complement Charizard. It can set Trick Room. They don't... I mean, they have a workable Trick Room mode just as much as some of the other teams do, right? With Pokemon like Bisharp, Gardevoir, Kangaskhan. Not the slowest, but if the opponent's committing to Tailwind, then they can be useful. But mostly I like this as Tailwind offense, with Sharpedo having Speed Boost to speed itself up some more. And then strong supports in Lucario and Kangaskhan that can use their support moves, or also hit hard if they want, right? I mean, we saw banded Kangaskhan, I think last season, no Mega, no problem, still hitting very hard, and with Scrappy, even Ghost types aren't safe. But yeah, Tailwind with Landorus and Gardevoir, and maybe Charizard looks to me like the strongest thing here. But I'm looking forward to seeing the Mega Sharpedo in action. And then I think Minccino is just a mascot pick. Genie Incarnate now is the next team here, coached by a longtime PDL staff member. This is the other Mega Gengar team, the Pool B version. And once again, we see the option of using a Trapper to keep opponents stuck in favorable positions to set up something like a Quiverdance Volcarona. That's an obvious option that I see here. They also do have a Perish Trap mode, just like the Chatots. They have a stronger Shadow Tag user, though. Mega Gengar with, again, Dewgong as the Perish Song user. They have, as I always say, a solid, well-rounded mix of Pokemon, right? Crocodile and Noivern are a fun duo because Noivern can set Tailwind and Crocodile can click Earthquake, with Noivern being immune. I believe Gengar is also immune before it Mega Evolves because I think it lost Levitate in Gen 7, and this is Gen 6. So they can do Earthquake spam stuff. They can get Intimidate from Crocodile, which helps Volcarona set up. Or they can just use their ground immunities and try to get Crocodile going with like a Choice Scarf or Choice Band and Moxie. They have Fake Out support and Wide Guard and stuff from Mienshao. That Pokemon can also hit hard. They have a strong Trick Room option with Bronzong and Camerupt. Right, this is the other Mega Camerupt team. I picked Mega Camerupt as my go-to Trick Room attacker. This team is not built around it to the same extent, but it has the same option. And with Bronzong getting Levitate, Camerupt can click Earthquake next to it if that's what you want to do. Or if Lava Plume is beneficial for some reason, you can use Heat Wave Bronzong. Nah, that's silly. That's probably not worth doing. But Levitate, with either ground type clicking Earthquake if you want, is totally an option. And then Bronzong can also help check Fairy types that give trouble to Crocodile or Noivern and be a partner for Crocodile. Well, that's clicking Earthquake, but you have better Fairy answers anyway in Mega Gengar and Volcarona, so I could see Crocodile kind of quietly going crazy in some matchups if the opponent is underprepared for it. Especially as it's also a Rock Resist, so it can come in on some of their Volcarona answers. Team doesn't... Some of those modes are maybe a little water weak, but then you have Tangrowth, which is a bulky grass to help deal with water types. It has redirection support. Can hit pretty hard. So they have the supports for all of the basic modes they want to run, I think. And again, the Perish Trap option with Dewgong. And sorry if my voice is a little tricky there. And then they have Pikachu Bell with their last pick, which is the Cosplay Pikachu form that learns Icicle Crash as a special Cosplay Pikachu move. I think a lot of people had forgotten about Cosplay Pikachu. That's why I feature it down here. Pretty unusual pick. I think this was the only one drafted. And it is something exclusive to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. It is a special Pikachu that you can get in those games, optimized for contests, so it has 5 forms that no other Pikachu can have. And each of them learns an exclusive move, at least at that time, that Pikachu couldn't normally learn. And Pikachu Bell is probably the best one, because Icicle Crash, with a Light Ball boosting the attack stat, probably goes pretty crazy. And as I am recording this, Genie Incarnate have already played their first match of the season, and I've seen people acting surprised in the Discord, not realizing that there's a Pikachu form that gets Icicle Crash. So there's some sneaky Bolt Beam coverage there from a Gen 6 exclusive form that doesn't even have a Pokemon home sprite for me to use up here. The Azure Bay Chatots took Talonflame first overall in Pool A, wanting a Pokemon that does something nothing else can do. Well, Genie Incarnate sure got something unique here in Pool B, and they got to wait until the last round to take it, so that's going to be a lot of fun to watch over the season. Next is the Glasgow Girafarig. This is the other Cresselia team. They and I made the same first round pick, but they clearly went in a different direction with it. While I drafted mostly a Trick Room team with some Sun options, the main mode that I see here is Fast Rain offense, right? Like, Mega Swampert and Kingdra both get Swift Swim and are enabled by Politoed sitting Drizzle. Mega Swampert, by the way, not drafted in Pool A, but kind of the centerpiece of this team. And they have some crazy strong Rain offense there. Plus they have Serperior, complementing the Swampert with his typing. hitting hard on the special side, being fast without needing Swift Swim, and having its fire weakness covered by the rain. They have Scizor, which also has its fire weakness heavily mitigated by the rain, so pretty strong rain mode here. They're not all in on the Politoed either. Meowstic, I'm pretty sure, gets Prankster Rain Dance. And they have Vivillon as a support option, or as a Quiver Dance, Hurricane, and Rain option, right? They have the Cottony support as well. Cottony does not get Tailwind, even though Whimsicott does, but with their 2 Swift Swim Pokemon, they're pretty good for speed control as it is. They also have a Trick Room option if situationally they want it. And although this is mainly a rain team, there may be some sun options as well, because they took Houndoom as their second Mega in the last... Well, not in the last round of the draft, but their last pick. And Houndoom gets Solar Power as its ability when it Mega Evolves, so you want to use that Meowstic or Cottony or Superior to set Sunny Day. Now all of a sudden you have a very hard-hitting Fire type in the sun. You have Cresselia, benefiting to the extent that you can get a benefit from it, from Moonlight, maybe a set up Cresselia situation again. They have sun options as well, right? But the main road, the rain mode is the main road here, with multiple ways to set up rain. Mainly Politoed, but like Meowstic as well. And then Swampert and Kingdra. Complemented by Superior and Scizor, all benefiting from that rain. So, Cresselia Sun, Cresselia Rain. We won't meet head-to-head unless it's in the final, but it's going to be interesting to see how we each do for sure. Next, the Elegancy makes its return, and this is the Mega Mawile team of Pool B. That is the only Mega they drafted. We do see, once again, the powerful defensive core of Amoonguss and Heatran. Those two Pokemon are going to be crazy together. And in this case, they're the defensive backbone to enable Mega Mawile to be a crazy offensive threat. And then they have some strong Pokemon around it. Starmie gets to be the water type in the Fire Water Grass core. Hitting reasonably hard on the special side and being reasonably fast with a varied move pool. Unfortunately, no Mega Starmie in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, but Starmie still gets a lot of coverage and is a reasonable offensive Pokemon, and it should round out a core with Amoonguss and Heatran pretty nicely. They have sun options, right? They can set Sunny Day with probably Murkrow, and then Shiftry gets Chlorophyll, and there's no Wind Rider in this generation, so it doesn't have that specific benefit from Tailwind, so you might as well set up the Sun and go for Chlorophyll unless you need Sun to not be up for some reason. Heatran gets a power boost on its attacks, so does Heat Rotom. I noticed while I was putting the images together that Heatran and Heat Rotom are on the same team in both pools, and I thought that was a little bit odd at first, but I mean, Rotom does cover Heatran's ground weakness, and in this case they both benefit from the Sun, so there's something there, right? They have Sun options. They have, again, bulky Fire, Water, Grass options with Amoonguss and Heatran, which should be one of the best defensive cores in both pools. They must... I feel like if they drafted... Oh, I was going to say they must have Trick Room somewhere. Yeah, Dusclops is right there at the end with their last pick. That can set Trick Room for Heatran, which is a reasonably slow attacker, Goodra, which is a reasonably slow bulky attacker, Mega Mawile, which is not especially fast for a Mega Pokemon. So they have Tail Room options if Murkrow gets Tailwind this gen. Actually, I think Shiftry probably gets Tailwind, even if Murkrow doesn't. And then they have Trapinch as well to trap and threaten things in Trick Room, much like whichever pool A team it's on. I've already forgotten. Listen, there are a lot of teams this season. What do you want me to do? But this team is a bunch of threats. Solid defensive core, a lot of offense. I'm pretty sure it has Tailwind somewhere. It definitely has Trick Room. So it's going to be hard to prepare for, even knowing that Mega Mawile is the main threat, because there are a lot more threats than that. New team, the Toronto Tynamos. I always like to see someone else representing Toronto when I'm not doing it myself, which is most of the time, but, you know. This is someone else's team for my hometown. I'm glad it still showed up somewhere. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm getting tired at the end of all this recording. Okay, Mega Charizard Y and Garchomp are together once again. This is now the third team in 2 PDL seasons to pair Charizard and Garchomp. I've gone over Y. It's a strong duo. You put the Garchomp next to Sylveon as well. Sylveon covering... What do I mean? I'm thinking in Fairy Dragon Steel terms, but they don't have a Steel type. They do have 2 strong Dragon types, and Garchomp can also click Earthquake next to Latias, right? Because Latias has Levitate. So those 2 dragons together are pretty hard to deal with. They do also just have a very strong Fairy type in Sylveon, but I am noticing actually no Steel type. They have plausibly 2 Chlorophyll Pokemon. They have Exeggutor, but then they also have Mega Venusaur. Mega Venusaur does not get Chlorophyll. By the way, Mega Venusaur undrafted in Pool A. But the reason I featured it as a Pokemon of interest in the bottom left is I'm pretty sure it does have access to Chlorophyll before it Mega Evolves, right? Like, that's Venusaur's hidden ability. It's just a question, does Venusaur have its hidden ability? But I think it probably does. So you don't get to use your item slot or a Wide Lens or Life Orb or anything. It has to be the Mega Stone. But they do have the option to bring Chlorophyll Venusaur with Mega Charizard Y, take advantage of the sun with Venusaur to spread Sunny Day or something. It is at the cost of the item slot, but it still feels pretty worthwhile a lot of the time. Or they can alternatively run a mode where they Mega Evolve the Venusaur. So this is definitely a team that I could see bringing both of its Megas to the same matchups at some points. And of course, Venusaur pairs nicely with Charizard as well. One of the original great synergies in Pokemon. Or if the Venusaur isn't cutting it, if they really need the item or something, they have the Exeggutor's Chlorophyll option. They can do Trick Room with Cofagrigus or Exeggutor, setting it up for Sylveon. And I guess Mega Venusaur is a reasonably slow, threatening Pokemon. Otherwise, Trick Room's not the best on this team because Mega Charizard Y, Garchomp, and Latios are all pretty fast, but it is an alternative mode that they can throw at opponents. Audino is just a strong support Pokemon with decent enough stats and a very solid support move pool and a surprising attacking move pool too. That could catch the opponent off guard with some random coverage. Pachirisu gives them Follow Me and also just an electric type. Maybe it'll help Venusaur and Exeggutor deal with the water types that threaten Charizard, although with Charizard setting up its own sun, and then Latios here as well, and Venusaur and Exeggutor. I don't know if they really need help with water types, but Pachirisu, I mean, Follow Me is just always one of the best moves in the game, right? And buying a free turn for Garchomp to set up or attack, or Sylveon to get its Throat Spray and throw off the first Hyper Voice, or Charizard to attack, or Latios to set up with Calm Mind or something. There's a ton that they can do with Follow Me to enable all of these threats. And the last 2 Pokemon, I got no idea. Clefairy can be a useful anti-Trick Room piece, underspeeding a lot of things, and disrupting with Sing, or I don't know if they get After You in this generation, but probably. I know I'm pretty sure Cleffa does not get Follow Me. It doesn't in newer gens, so I'm guessing it doesn't in this gen either, which is why I'm a little unsure. I don't know if it gets Friend Guard, actually. But disrupting opposing Trick Room is honestly my best guess as to what Cleffa's role is supposed to be. It also could just be a favorite Pokemon pick, right? And I don't know what Anorith is doing here. That could be a favorite too, for all I know. Maybe they just had 9 Pokemon they really wanted and then goofed around with a couple of remaining points, and I'm overthinking it. Totally plausible. In any case, the Charizard-Garchomp duo making appearances in both pools. One of the scarier duos for sure, up there with Heatran and Mungus. We saw Charizard-Garchomp put in a lot of work in a Gen 8 format last season, and that was not Mega Charizard Y boosting its stats and setting up its own sun. And the Venusaur is a really dynamic, interesting threat on this team because it can take advantage of Chlorophyll, or it can be the Mega Evolution choice, right? And your Charizard answers might suddenly not match up so well into Mega Venusaur. That's going to be super interesting to watch over the course of the whole season. And then they have strong Pokemon like Latios and Sylveon, and then they have a Trick Room mode, plausibly. Next team is Bois. No, I'm kidding. It's Bois, like the Heracross. You can probably tell from the logo just being a Heracross. Mega Latios. Undrafted in Pool A. This is the only Mega Lati at all in the league. I might have drafted a Mega Lati if I didn't already have a very bulky, expensive Psychic type with my first pick. I do want to see these do well. I like I like both of those legendaries quite a lot. And design-wise, I'm a little underwhelmed by their Mega Evolutions, but I hope they are strong, and we see them put in work. What's interesting is that this is largely a Trick Room team from the looks of it around Mega Latios. Mega Latios is not, in my mind, a Trick Room Pokemon, but I see Trevenant, Escavalier, Hariyama, and Rhyperior. There's a pretty strong Trick Room mode there. They even have a couple of the same Pokemon that I do. Togetic with Follow Me to help enable the setup. But then, I mean, we'll see what else they do with this, right? They have Purloin for the disruption. It could click a weather move. It could click Thunder Wave and give them another kind of speed control if they want to go with a fast Latios mode. Arcanine is just a solid all-around Pokemon. It's reasonably fast. It's just a good, tanky, reasonably hard-hitting fire type with Intimidate. So there's definitely some flexibility in how they can play this. And then they have the Greninja for a water type being a fast kind of glass cannon Pokemon. with the priority Water Shuriken as well. So the Trick Room mode is the thing that stands out to me first on this team. Well, Mega Latios first, and then the Trick Room mode. But they have a lot of just really good Pokemon that can play flexibly in different ways, right? Like Arcanine can play in pretty much any kind of mode. Hariyama doesn't have to be played in Trick Room, and of course it gives them Fake Out and Feint and so on, like it does for my team. They have Disruptive supports in Purloin and Togetic. They have Ditto, so they can yoink an opponent's biggest threat. The interesting thing to me is that I don't completely see the game plans for Mega Latios. They could do Calm Mind with various supports. It could be here to just delete a threat to create openings for Trevenant to set up, or Hariyama to set up or something. But like I think I see a decent amount of the picture of how these pieces fit together, but there's going to be more to watch as this team actually starts playing some matches, and we see exactly what they're cooking around Mega Latios, because I don't see all of it right now. Then we have the Snowpoint Snorunts, coached by League Commissioner Reckless Trico, whose channel I will surely remember to link in the description. Pendragon United coach Sari also has a channel. I don't think he uploads much, but maybe I'll link that one as well. I don't know if he'll upload any of this season. But, so this team caught everyone's attention right away because they pretty much signaled immediately that they were drafting Thundurus to click Electric Move into their Mega Sceptile and give it the Lightning Rod boost. I don't know how effective that's going to be, but it's a really funny tech, and honestly it might be pretty effective because Thundurus, if you're clicking like Discharge, I think it gets Discharge, right? Then you're boosting your Sceptile and you're doing damage and you have a good para chance. Mega Sceptile's fast anyway, but you can make it that much more likely to overwhelm some opponents. And teams are going to want to throw their ground types at Thundurus and their electric types to avoid getting paralyzed, but Mega Sceptile matches up extremely well to both of those. So remember when I said that I thought about drafting Thundurus and figuring the rest out? Maybe I could have come up with Thundurus and Mega Sceptile, but I didn't think of it. Well, I'm happy with what I got, but I'm really interested in seeing what this duo will do, because actually the synergy makes a lot of sense at face value. And the Mega Sceptile with the Lightning Rod also covers Gyarados' electric weakness, right? So there's a really obvious, very powerful synergy there. Then they have just some really strong Pokemon in Clefable and Metagross. Metagross gives them a tanky physical Pokemon that covers a decent number of Sceptile's weaknesses. Not fire, but they have Pokemon like Gyarados and Magmortar for that. It hits very hard on the physical side, while Mega Sceptile hits harder on the special side. Clefable can give them redirection, or just hit things with Moonblast with its fairy typing, or do some setup shenanigans. Azelf gives them another fast attacker that opponents have to worry about. Persian has proven to be a good support repeatedly in the PDL with Fake Out, Technician boosted, Icy Wind, a bunch of other support moves. I don't know if it gets Icy Wind this gen, but honestly, why not? It does later. Magmortar is just a good tanky fire type. I'm pretty sure it does not have Follow Me in this gen, but it does form a strong Fire, Water, Grass core with Sceptile and Gyarados. And Magmortar not having Follow Me is okay because Sentret does. Diglett gives them a trapping option. I guess that's an alternative way to deal with electric types if Mega Sceptile is not enough, right? If you want to really get the Gyarados going. That's probably not the only thing Diglett is here for. I mean, this is not a ground weak team, unlike some others, but I could see a few things that Diglett could trap that would then remove threats into like Thundurus and Sceptile. I mean, this team's a little bit Steel weak, right? Like Thundurus isn't, but Sceptile, Clefable, Metagross, even Gyarados to an extent, they don't have the best ways to break opposing Steel types. Azelf helps because it gets a fast Flamethrower. Magmortar helps with a Stab Flamethrower. But I wonder whether Diglett is kind of an insurance policy against... I don't know what. Well, we'll see. I don't know, I'm just spitballing. It's their last pick. It might not even ever come to a game, but we'll see what they have in mind for it if it comes up. I'm most interested, though, in Mega Glalie because that feels like a mascot pick, right? This is the Snowpoint Snorunts. Reckless Trico really likes ice types and does ice themes all the time, but it's an expensive mascot pick. They use their second Mega slot. I mean, maybe I'm wrong and they have serious game plans for Glalie, but it has the vibe of a mascot pick because what do you do with Mega Glalie? But if you're committing this much to it, you probably have something in mind, and it surely will make an appearance this season. So if I'm an opponent, I think I'm more worried about Thundurus, Mega Sceptile, Gyarados, and then probably Metagross and mix and match whatever supports, or complementary pieces like Magmortar. Again, Thundurus powering up Sceptile, and Sceptile covering Gyarados' main weakness is is a very strong set of synergies that jump out at me immediately on this team. But Mega Glalie, I just want to know what they're cooking. It does get moody before it Mega Evolves and then Refrigerate after, so it's a little bit of a tricky Pokemon to work with, but it could be a menace under the right circumstances. Next, we have the Salt Lake City Toxic, and speaking of menaces under the right circumstances, this team is set to live up to its name with some really obvious strong synergies. Chansey and Shuckle together in the bottom left. I think the first time I've ever put more than one Pokemon there, because if you didn't play VGC before Generation 9, you might be unfamiliar with this combination. I called out that Shuckle gets the move Guard Split, which averages its defensive stats with those of the target. And this is the team that had that on my radar. Chansey and Shuckle. I played Gen 8 VGC on Showdown and on Cartridge. I didn't go to events yet, but I played the formats. And I would get frustrated by this sometimes. And I guess the combination goes back longer than Gen 8. Chansey has very high special defense, but very low physical defense. But Shuckle has some of the highest stats in the game in both of its defenses. So if it averages out its physical defense with Chansey, Chansey is not so frail on that side anymore. And then I think you boost Chansey's evasiveness, right? I think you use like Minimize. I hadn't had to remember this tech in a while, but it's coming back to me now. You make Chansey hard to hit, and you make it hard to knock out, because it has high defense after averaging with Shuckle at no cost to its special defense, because I'm pretty sure Shuckle's base special defense is higher than Chansey's too. And you have just a really frustrating, annoying Pokemon to try to take down. It felt in the draft, I mean, I think they called it out a little bit, like Pool B coaches were targeting Haze users to make sure they had an answer to this. Like, I think somebody had Yamask earlier. Yeah, and maybe I'm thinking of somebody else, but I think some people were like, got my Haze user once they drafted one. There's also Dusclops. I think Greninja gets Haze. So people were trying to be ready for this, which is good, because it's not a fun time facing this if you're not ready. I guess the upside is in draft, your opponents know to prepare for it. But then they also have one of the all-time great powerhouse VGC synergies in Whimsicott and Terrakion. Whimsicott sets Tailwind, Terrakion is reasonably fast to begin with, but it's super fast in Tailwind. And Whimsicott clicks Beat Up into Terrakion, giving it, if you have all 4 Pokemon, is it 1 for every Pokemon? I think it's +4 attack, maybe it's only +3. And then Terrakion clicks Rock Slide, spread damage, heavily boosted by Justified, and of course with the flinch chances. One of the all-time famous VGC duos known as Terracott in the player base. So, 2 very different kinds of famous duos here, but both frustrating to face. Terrakion is, kind of a more honest offensive thing, but the Rock Slide flinches can be a problem. And then Chansey Shuckle is just, well, like I said, I think the Salt Lake City Toxic will live up to their name. Then on top of that, they have a couple of redirectors. They have Riolu with his Prankster support. Coaching doesn't exist in this generation, but Riolu can give them weather control if they want. It can mess with opponents' stats, but it also gets Follow Me. Pangolo gets Rage Powder and Sleep Powder and stuff, kind of like a budget Fungus. 2 Megas, both very bulky and hard to deal with. Mega Sableye is tricky with the Magic Bounce, because opponents' disruptive options can be bounced back into them, but then it's also just bulky. It can set up with Calm Mind. It is weak to Fairy, which is one of the best types, and a lot of teams have strong Fairies, but Mega Sableye is hard to remove under the right circumstances, and so is Mega Slowbro, which is bulky, can set up, can kind of be a 1 Pokemon Trick Room mode if you want it to, or I guess actually Chansey Shuckle can benefit from Trick Room as well, because they're both very slow, especially Shuckle. So a Mega Slowbro Trick Room early game could enable a Chansey Shuckle late game if that's what the Toxic need to get through a situation. I don't know what Gourgeist does. It gets Trick or Treat. It can give the Ghost type to a target, but I don't know how much that does for them here. It probably does something else that I'm overlooking. Aromatisse, support Fairy type. Linoon. I don't know if it gets Belly Drum and Extreme Speed in this generation. That's the main thing I think of when I see Linoon. I feel like in most generations where it appears, it has some way to get that combination. And so with 2 possible redirectors, and with Pokemon like Terrakion and Chansey taking up a lot of attention, if Linoon does get Belly Drum, Oh, you know what Lanoon does? I think it gets Simple Beam. It does in Gen 8. I drafted it last season with thoughts of using Simple Beam, and then I dropped it without ever actually doing that. I don't know if it gets Belly Drum or not. That's the first thing that comes to mind. If I were playing this team, I would check, but they're in Pool B. Hopefully I'll never play this team. The only way it happens is if we get to the final. But if Lanoon gets Simple Beam and can click that into Chansey, then that just makes the Chansey Shuckle mode even more toxic. Or you can get a Slowbro or Sableye boosted more quickly. This is gonna be a frustrating team. Well, I think they knew what they were doing with this name. And I think that only leaves one more. Yep, that's right. This is the last one. The Fogey Fearows. The only Mega Lucario in the season, undrafted in Pool A. I think Mega Sableye and Mega Slowbro were both also undrafted in Pool A. So like I said, a lot of different Mega picks in Pool B, even as we see some of the same cores like Charizard, Garchomp, and Heatran Amoonguss. But a lot of different directions gone in as well. I don't really know what Mega Lucario does. Lucario is kind of a strong and versatile Pokemon, and Mega Lucario I think is more of the same. And they've surrounded it with other strong and versatile Pokemon, I guess. I mean, Clefairy can enable Lucario, which has a bunch of setup options, as well as just hitting hard on both sides of the physical special split. You can also enable Dragon Dance Salamence or set up Ferrothorn. They have a Trick Room option with Reuniclus. Not a ton of great Trick Room Pokemon otherwise, but Reuniclus is, like the Mega Slowbro, kind of a one Pokemon Trick Room mode in some situations. Honestly, I don't entirely get this team. This is another one where I'm not completely sure what to make of what I'm seeing. But they have a strong Firewater Grass core. They have a strong Fairy Dragon Steel core. I think Mismagius is kind of a slept-on Pokemon sometimes. It has pretty good stats for, like, reasonable stats as a special attacker for how strong Ghost is as an offensive type. No Annihilape in this generation, so Primeape cannot run Eviolite, but I don't know, it could still be reasonably strong. But yeah, this is a team, we are ending on a team where I don't entirely see what they're cooking, but they have some well-rounded cores that they can throw at but they can throw whatever is favorable at a given matchup. They have setup options with not only Clefairy getting Follow Me, but also Mega Lucario getting Follow Me if they really want to click that. They have some Trick Room options. But I think what stands out to me most here is Clefairy enabling any kind of Mega Lucario setup. Agility, Nasty Plot, Swords Dance, whatever. Or Ferrothorn with Curse, or Salamence with Dragon Dance. They don't have to play a setup mode with this team. It's the most obvious thing to me for them to do. But we'll just have to wait and see. This is another one of those teams where I think some of the game plans are kind of hidden beyond the level that I can see just looking at the Pokemon. And when we get to the matches, we'll see what we find out from there. And so that is PDL Season 10. A milestone for the league, the return of the Halifax Masquerainmen, and a trip back in time to VGC 2015. These videos are going to be tiring this season. I had to take breaks for some time to get through this one, but there should be a lot of good matches across both pools, and there are a lot of fun teams. And again, the interesting thing about having two pools is sometimes the same Pokemon were drafted with different game plans around them, or different versions of the same basic game plan. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what people come up with. I'm too tired right now to hype up the season much more than that, but as soon as I'm done recording here, I'm going to jump into preparing for my first match. And hopefully, competitively, the result is better than last time. I do feel pretty good about the team that I've drafted, but either way, it's going to be a lot of fun. So please do stick around.